Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Marty O'Donnell Show. I'm going to make a short introduction because the show went a little long. I had a great time talking to my guest this week, Matthew Peterson, who is the executive editor of Blaze Media. It turns out that I'm basically about as old as his dad, but I feel like he and I are more like brothers, but actually I'm much older. Super interesting guy, Thomas Aquinas University, very, very intelligent, well-read. He does great work with Blaze Media and has been in politics for a while. So this one is going to be a lot of political and spiritual and some cultural stuff. So I hope you enjoy it. Here is Matthew Peterson. Okay, everybody, and here after my glowing intro, which I haven't done yet, is Matthew Peterson from Blaze Media. Welcome to the Marty O'Donnell Show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Matthew, we don't know each other, so we're going to get to know each other today, but I have done a little research using all the tools of the internet. Is it true that you have a BA in philosophy, theology, math, science, and liberal arts? Obviously, liberal arts just thrown in for the goodness of it. Is that true?
Not entire. I mean, no. I mean, I think what that probably is an attempt to show all the things you have to study at my alma mater. So, I don't know if you remember.
Thomas Aquinas.
Yes. Yeah. So the BA is it's a liberal arts, right?
Yeah.
But you study the same subjects. Everyone studies the same thing. You read mostly original works, whether you're, like you read Newton in science at some point. And,
Got it.
That sort of thing. So yeah, it was.
So you don't actually have a separate BA in philosophy, theology, math.
No,
Okay. Well, then you should go to the AI program that is telling me that's the case. I thought it was funny because it says liberal arts is the last thing, and I thought, isn't that all the liberal arts right there? I was kind of confused. So,
yes.
But then you went ahead and did master's and PhD in political science, which is kind of interesting. What do you do for fun?
Well, today I walked 8 miles, lifted some weights, trying to get in shape, and I did the American Mind podcast of a publication I created a couple years ago. I hadn't been on the podcast in 3 years. And then I did our show at Blaze, and then I pretended to be editor-in-chief at Blaze all day, and now I'm here with you.
Yeah, well, obviously being here with me is fun. That will be fun. But I mean, seriously, like, it just seems like, you've got the, Thomas Aquinas University, Life of the Mind, old school, so to speak. It seems like you, at some point as a child, how did you get so attracted to this way of learning?
I guess my 14-year-old just asked me, my son asked me, like, what's this book about on the bookshelf? I'm looking around like, did God just, zap this house with the spirit of truth? Because this has never happened before. I'll tell you all about that book. So when I was a kid, my family moved around a bit. My dad just had different government jobs. So he's a lawyer.
Oh.
So he was the first one in his family to get a 4-year degree, and then he did a joint law PhD program, and he never finished the PhD because he had me and other kids. And he worked for attorney generals, Department of Justice when I was like 12 years old. And so we moved around a lot. So and for that and other reasons, we were homeschooled. Off and on. Like I went to high school, but we were homeschooled. And I remember he would come up to me and say, this book is probably too beyond you. You probably couldn't handle this book. You probably couldn't read it.
Nice.
It's like The Hobbit and I'm 6.
Okay.
You couldn't read this. And I would pick it up, and I just was really blessed with the parents who just put that in front of me a lot. And we moved around, and there were no screens around, so I read a ton, and then I graduated. I went to normal private high school in Michigan, and I spent a year, Marty, looking for a place to go, and I kind of was outside the box,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I was too stupid to understand. Like I didn't understand like rankings or anything like that. I was literally looking at curriculum.
Oh.
I want to know the kind of stuff I'm interested in. I want to see what who am I going to study with, and what am I going to read.
Right.
And so. So I was smarter then than I am now, frankly. But I was able to look for that, and I didn't know anything about like jobs or anything like that.
Sure.
And so I was dissatisfied, and I took a gap year because I graduated early, and and I found, of all places, like National Review's Guide to Colleges had at the time had all these weird, places, and I just, as soon as I saw a place where it's like you just read all the books,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm gonna go there. That's awesome. That's what I want to do, and that's how it started.
National Review. So let me just give you a quick little background on me. First
Yeah.
of all, we're obviously both extremely conservative. Maybe you don't know that about me, but I went to the Heritage Foundation a year ago, and I spoke in front of them, and I forget the elderly guy who's been there forever, sort of heavy set, looks sort of like he could be a character from Casablanca. I forget the guy's name.
Yes, yes. Say no more.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I looked at the audience for this luncheon thing, and I said, you know what? I bet you I'm more conservative than everybody in this room. And then this guy turned around and looked at me, and I said, no, seriously, we'll compare pedigree after this. And then because when I was 9 years old, I actually was watching television, and I saw live Ronald Reagan introduce Barry Goldwater to the world. Well, I mean, it wasn't introduced to the world, but certainly it was during the Republican convention. And I remember just being transfixed by the logic of what he was talking about. And at that moment, it was like a conversion experience. I'm not joking. And I went to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I'm a conservative. Of course, I probably was like, Mom, I'm a conservative. So, and she probably looked at me like, oh, my poor child, I hope you be okay. I mean, she's conservative, and my dad was too, but not Goldwater conservative. And I became fascinated by that, the logic that I heard Ronald Reagan talk about. And then I was a huge Barry Goldwater fan, and subscribed to National Review, I think, when I was 18, and was, read National Review almost every month, cover to cover. So, but I also got hooked into the Beatles. So I switched from being a conservative politician idea to I'll be a rock star instead. So the whole time I'm in rock bands and trying to get girls that way, and being a music major and all that, I was this raging conservative, which was very, it was incongruous to most of the people who met me. So was your father conservative? Was your mom conservative? Because of your Christian upbringing, or just the books that he laid out for you?
They were. I mean, they had an interesting religious trajectory. I mean, they kind of met when they were teenagers, and became sort of like evangelical, I guess you could say. Like,
Sure.
Were saved, kind of 70s Christian, very serious about changing their lives and their way of life. And then, my dad loved to read, and was never like faith and reason or contradictory kind of guy.
Sure.
Like, these are harmonious things, and very interesting. So I remember watching Dan Rather on the news at my grandfather, my mom's father's house, and he was like an old school. I mean, be super conservative today, but like an old school Democrat, like a working class guy.
Sure.
And my dad would be like critiquing everything Dan Rather is saying. This is fake news, basically, and blah blah blah.
Exactly.
So I was always like outside of the system in that way, and I guess I kind of always have been. Although, I mean, like, I don't read National Review anymore. I'll say it.
I don't either, but I did get to meet William F. Buckley in the airport when I was at grad school, and
Oh wow.
yeah, that was, believe it or not, that was a real thrill. And I'll tell you real quickly why it was a thrill, because I went up to him, and I was in grad school, I had the long hair, and I was a music major, and he's like, oh yes, well, what are you interested in? And I said, well, I'm a music major. And I wanted to talk to him about politics and politics of the day and stuff like that. And he sat down with me in the airport and says, well, how do you feel about Johann Sebastian Bach? And we went through, and I've played Well-Tempered Clavier, and I was a piano major to start with.
Oh, wow.
I played a lot of Bach. And so the entire time that we spoke, it was nothing except Bach.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought, that's wonderful. He wasn't a one-dimensional human being. He was so well-rounded, and the fact that he loved music and knew that I was a music guy, he wanted to talk to me about music, and so that was pretty cool.
No, and I think that's a really good point because I don't think that I don't like labels very much, and
Yeah.
philosophy is like this where you're an ist or an ism or an Ian. You add those behind, and it's like most of the guys you're reading, they don't want you to be an ist, an ism. They're just trying to figure it out, and they're brilliant minds, and you read them, but you try to make a closed system out of something, and especially politics, right? I mean, politics
Yeah.
is messy. And then I don't like that, and so to me, like that's kind of the only way to fly. Like you have to be interested in a lot of things, and if your identity is some kind of political ideology, you adopt a politics because you just think this is the way to get things done, or this is the right way to approach something, and it gets weird. It gets weird
Yep.
when you start to make it an ism, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. And people, right now, what's happening, I think we're in a really fascinating time. I was attracted into this political thing a year ago instead of just retiring. Basically, I'm probably your dad's age. That's what I think. From what you're telling me, like what you graduated in what
He's
80? 2001 maybe? When did you graduate?
from college, yeah, 2001. He's 56. He was born in 1956.
Oh,
Say no more.
I'm a year older than your dad, so but we're exactly in the same spot. So like, yeah, you're like you could be my son that I never had. Okay,
Yes.
so that's really fascinating. So yeah, so what your parents went through was very similar to the life I went through in terms of the chronology of the times and the age. Started off evangelical, went to Wheaton College, graduated from Wheaton College Conservatory of Music, and a few years ago, after my wife went before me and went through RCIA, I flipped the bit, and now I'm Catholic. And so I'm curious, like, what's your spiritual journey to get to the point where from what I understand, you're Catholic. Is that true?
Yeah, so that is very interesting. Yeah, we got a lot. So they went to a lot of different churches growing up. I was never really had a crisis of faith per se, but it was more like trying to figure it out. And we were Protestant, right? I mean,
Sure.
went to a lot of different kinds of churches, like little churches in with the tent set up in Western New York. It's like it's been happening for 150, 200 years.
Yeah.
To big, evangelical churches. So when I went to Thomas Aquinas College, I ended up reading a lot of Thomas Aquinas, and I got kicked out for a year. So I should have graduated in 2000, but I graduated in 2001 because I liked to
You got
explore.
kicked out. Okay, there's a story there.
I was just, it's very strict on absences. Is really what did it.
Okay.
And I was kind of like, I came here because I wanted to read what I want to read, right? And if there's other stuff I don't want to do, I won't do that. So I had to pay for it all myself coming back. And you have to restart. Like if you fail the first semester sophomore year, you got to go back and you're in the class behind you now.
Oh,
And
you're kidding.
yeah,
Wow. Okay.
so they didn't like my shenanigans, and that was good. And so but I knew I had to go back. So I was there extra. But by the end of that, I kind of felt like I really, somewhere along the way, I was arguing for Aquinas, in senior theology class. And so intellectually, I was kind of like there. I thought this is true. This makes sense to me. But there's something more than an intellect in us.
Yep.
And what happened is the most unintellectual priest on the campus, who was the chaplain at Notre Dame's hockey team at some time, Newfoundland guy, big dude. He had a hard time writing out his sermons, and they were like 5 minutes long, which is why you wanted to go to mass with him because it's just far more than the rest. He was always like into sports, go to his house and watch football. This guy was just legit. But he just came up to me one day and he's like, "Have you thought about, basically come over to my house and watching the RCIA videos that he would show?"
Really? Oh.
And that's all he said. And when he said it, I was like, it was like being led by an angel. I was like, you know what? This is what I should do. And so that's what I did. And I didn't really look back. And, I'm not a good Catholic, but I try to be a good Catholic. And I in a serious way. some of my family ended up through that experience, not so much because of me, but because I was like, hey, Dad, you should read these church father books, Some of them ended up reverting or converting as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, there was a bunch of reasons for us.
Yeah.
Probably my most primary reason was my wife became Catholic, and eventually I was sort of like, well, that's fine, And then I started going to the churches that she was going to. We started in Seattle, now we live in Las Vegas. Moving to Las Vegas because it's where my grandkids are, by the way. So it's like I would probably never just choose to live in Las Vegas out of the blue, but it's turned out great. But going to Mass, I'd have to go up and do that thing, and it sort of dawned on me that I wasn't really fully participating in the service in the community that I was in, and I wasn't sharing communion with my wife. And I thought, well, that stinks. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. So I went to the RCIA people at the church and said, hey, look, I've been baptized. I went to Wheaton College, right? So, what's the quick path through the RCIA thing? And 2 years. So I got no pass at all. So, and it was good. I needed all that 2 years to really absorb the real history and the stuff. But it was fascinating to me. It was sort of like I could sit in that class and say, oh, yeah, that Nicene Creed and Apostles' Creed, that's the same creed, And some of them people would look at me and say, wait, I thought you were Protestant. I'm like, yeah, we got the same creed. So it's interesting to me how much really is overlapping. I've since come to believe that if only Luther could have just been another order in the church, Franciscan, Lutheran, it stayed within the Catholic Church. I just feel like, I don't know, things would have been so much better, but that's not to be.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a great point because I mean it's clear that it is a scandal. So the Bible says a scandal. If everyone's separated, right? The rest of the world is like, well, okay,
Yeah.
you guys have your own disagreements, and we know that it's not supposed to be that way. So I always think, if you had everyone, if the gang was all together, the Eastern Orthodox and
Yep.
Catholics in one
1054.
group, you'd certainly have like an incredible, like a much more powerful thing that would incorporate all these different elements, and separation is not a good thing. So I mean, it's interesting. I don't, of course, if HR was listening, it'd be illegal, but I don't actually think about hiring people based on religion.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that I end up hiring people like Jews, Protestants, Catholics, and you see how much harmony there is among people who
Yep.
are just kind of serious about their faith.
Yes. Well, and to me, I feel like there's a resurgence, there's a spiritual hunger, especially amongst the youth, especially the kids who went through COVID at a really important time in their life. It seems to me, from what I'm sort of sensing, is that there's a hunger out there that I'm not going to say it's a revival or anything, but like I think there is a potential for a return to, Orthodox kind of faith. Judeo-Christian faith is growing, it seems like to me, especially among the young people. So I don't know if you've been noticing that.
Oh yeah. So I think it's some of the statistics that we have. I mean, a lot of it's anecdotal, but probably for both of us. But I mean, for Catholics anyway, it's a U.
Oh, really?
So the since 2009, I think it is, and last year, plus 11% in 18 to 35-year-olds. Among 65 plus, it's minus 21% church attendance.
Okay. Wow.
So like you have older people just dropping off, and then you have younger people, and particularly young men, coming on, and I think I think that is happening, and I'm interested. I mean, how are you seeing this? Just kind of people you talk to?
It's the people I talk to, especially younger people, that I'm surprised that they are talking about. Yeah, mine is completely anecdotal. I don't know why. I feel like maybe I read an article someplace that said there was young men are coming back to the Catholic Church. At least I read that someplace. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and not even coming back, they're coming to the Catholic Church. Like they're unchurched to begin with. So it's pretty interesting.
No, we're talking about this at the dinner table the other night with my
Really?
parents. You should have been there. We should all have a drink. What was coming out was, so you got these people who are like actually going to church, who are younger, and then right behind them you have even more people who are younger, who are just like church curious, church friendly.
Yeah.
And or you get these young guys who are like, I'm not Catholic or Christian or whatever, but I'd like to find a woman who is, and I would actually like, not just because they want some sweet young girl, because they really want that lifestyle.
Right.
And they see lifestyle wise, I hate the word lifestyle, style, life, stupid word, but like in terms of way of life, they see that. And the biggest thing for me has been, I wanted to do like intellectual stuff at first, because I thought like we argue about nature, natural law, and like philosophy, and stuff is very important, and people need to do it. But of course, the entire intellectual world is completely falling apart, and the universities suck, and whatever. But what ended up happening is like the last 10 years. This is what I've seen. This is what I'm curious if we're talking about. The last 10 years, it's as if you have a bunch of young people who they don't have anything to rebel against. They don't know anything about religion, like literally nothing. Right? They have nothing in their heads. So they're just objectively looking at the world, and they're going, "This is awful. This is terrible. And why don't we have that? That actually looks good over there."
Yeah.
It's the opposite of the rebellion that happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense to me. I think, I remember a Mad magazine when I was growing up, where it was showing like the children of the parents who went through World War II were all rebellious and beatniks and hippies, and then their children were rebelling against them, so they were all clean-cut conservatives. And to some extent, you have to rebel against what seems like the norm when you hit a certain age, and because the norm is so deviant. Really, and the norm is not normal, and I think these kids are like, well, to rebel against that, I actually have to find out what normal is again, and I think they're coming back, which I think is pretty encouraging. As a matter of fact, now this is going to lead into something else, because I'm going to try to be as gentle with you as I can be. Apparently, you're not a big gamer. Is that true?
Well, I say I am.
My video games. I'm talking about video games.
Be gentle. Let's see. I had that Tetris post this morning.
Yes, I responded
to it. In
general,
I'm inclined. It's kind of like my Buffalo Bills just put out a rainbow flag logo they do every year. I'm like, well, I'm kind of a hypocrite because I'm still going to watch them. It's terrible, but I give myself one thing. So video games are certainly something I've enjoyed, and I still have video games with my kids. But I'm inclined against it, as my better judgment is like, I would like to throw this box out of my house.
Okay, all right.
So
you're not just 100% down on video games.
No.
Okay.
I think that as first off, no one understands, right? It's stuff that you've probably had to explain many times, how big this industry is, and the power it has, and then also the artistry and story, etc. Like, so for instance, at the house, I'm trying to think like, how do I limit this? But it's like, okay, well, they need to have like Skyrim, they need like Red Dead 2, like they need a few things to like give them a taste of the digital there.
Yeah.
I don't want, or my 12-year-old right now, he has a lemonade stand. Mark,
okay.
You would not believe how much money you make at a lemonade stand in Texas. He has it so that he can get a PC, because he thinks a PC is something exotic. Right? He's used to laptops and iPads and and Sony. So I'm not 100% against, but I am like inclined against, because I feel like in general, so much time suck, and so I'm conflicted, man. I'm like, I'm torn.
Well, I was looking at like when you graduated, and it's like that's right around 2001 was when we shipped Halo 1.
Yes.
And most people in your demographic, we were able to suck into our hands.
You got a little bit of me, for sure.
Okay.
Sure. So
well,
And not as if I was some nerd who's a stranger to certain soundtracks or
Oh,
games.
okay, okay, all
No,
right.
not at all.
All right. Well, I misinterpreted you. I was just gonna, but I was gonna be very gentle and not be too judgmental. But I like, geez, you got kids who are 14, 12, 14 years old. I mean, how square are you gonna be if you don't let them play video games? So that's good.
No,
But
I mean,
I do what I do agree with is that it can be a time suck, and kids need to be outside, and there has to be a balance. And of course, in the way I look at video games, when I was making video games, starting in the '90s, my people my age they thought I was insane, and they were so square and they were so out of it, and I'm like, hey, do your kids play video games? And they're like, yeah, it's horrible. And I'm like, no, no, don't you trust your kids? Don't you think your kids have some sort of judgment? Aren't they reading Lord of the Rings and playing video games? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
they're, they you don't know, but there are some video games that are deep with story and lore, and they're teaching them stuff. And if people like me aren't making video games, then it's going to be all the idiot people making video games,
yes.
and your kids you don't want to discourage the creatives from bringing like their Christianity or their life experience or their education into this new medium. And so I was able to convert a couple of the fuddy-duddies into playing video games. So I was going to convert you today, but obviously I don't have to. That's good to know.
Well, yeah, I'm curious. I mean, curious because I go back and forth on it because it's like it is a premier art form. Like I mean, we were the first issue of Frontier, the magazine we put out. We had someone talking about like the renegade people just like making their own stuff,
Yeah.
and which seems like an important thing to always be around. And I even think like really simple stuff. Like there was a game like Red Storm Rising based on the Clancy. It was like submarines,
Yeah.
and it was very simple, like
Sure.
80s computer game.
Right.
But you would learn something about even just how things operate, like digital
Yeah.
stuff operates, because you're trying to game the algorithms. And I guess if there's one thing I'm curious, we're curious your thoughts about this. I get worried about now is like with that stuff. That's why I want my son to have a PC and build it, like 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that I would hear people growing up being like, "Oh, we'll give it to the kid; they'll figure this out on the internet." And I was a professor, for a
Right.
while, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and the fact of the matter is they're terrible at Googling. Like they're
Yeah.
terrible at finding stuff on the internet, and AI is going to make that even worse in a way, right?
Oh, I
Because
know. Absolutely.
it's like you don't have to do anything. So I don't mind. Like we live in a digital world,
Right.
but it's like, how do you navigate that? And I feel like games are kind of similar. It's like
Oh, yeah.
there's good and bad. There's like there's something that's much more involved, and then there's stuff that's just like, you hit me up with the crack. I don't know.
Well,
Something-
you're absolutely right. I mean, it is a dangerous place because, I mean, video game addiction and time suck, that's real stuff. I mean, and there are game developers who know exactly how to hook people, and the dopamine hits and the cycle and the whole thing that just keep people addicted to this kind of treadmill game. But it's that similar. It's like it is a true medium, and I think you have to be able to, like, for example, when we made Halo 1 in 2001, the team I was with is a small team, 35 people, all these guys from Chicago, University of Chicago, the two main guys, Northwestern, North Park. One of my favorite designers did have a triple major, math, philosophy, and physics. And he was a great designer. He's one of my favorite designers because we all had like different kinds of degrees. Nobody had a computer science degree
Right.
or a game degree. It was all this other stuff, and we came together. Our art director was the son of a pastor. Our writer was the son of a pastor. The philosophy guy from North Park was, grew up with his parents were, I think, music ministers or something. Anyway, so the story we had was imbued with all sorts of symbolic stuff: Halo, the flood, the covenant, all these things, and it wasn't some sort of allegorical thing. I'm not putting it on the
Right.
I'm not putting it up there with like Lord of the Rings or anything, but it had substance to it if you dug. And if you didn't want to dig, you could still be a 12-year-old just running around shooting aliens, and that's all you thought it was. But for those who dug beneath the surface, they're still writing and doing videos about the underlying meanings in Halo and the Halo universe, at least the Halos we made for 10 years. So I don't know. Sometimes I approach a game and I can see, no, it's just a treadmill. It's just a, surface level thing. It's like going to see a Marvel movie, right? I mean, it's just like, okay, it's just cotton candy. There's no substance. And then every once in a while you run into a thing that you can tell there are thoughtful people. There are interesting, deeper messages underlying it. And those are the story games. That's like, it's sort of like saying TV is bad. No, TV is just a thing. But it's like, but all I ever see is football. And it's like, okay, well, that's one thing you can see on TV. You could see, all sorts of things. So anyway, it's not easy, but it is a medium. It's a mature medium. Most of it's garbage, but there are some good things. So what I was going to say to begin this, to try to convince you about games, is that I think this sort of modern movement to question the deviant woke society that has infected all of entertainment, all of media, and especially games, it is started in about 2012, 2013, I think, with the movement called Gamergate. I don't know if you've heard about that, but this was a bunch of, people who were like, wait, what's going on with the game journalism? And there's this insidious relationship, and they're pushing these, gamers are all misogynists and they're Neanderthals, so Gamergate was a response against the woke intrusion into games, and it continues to this day. And that movement has grown and grown, and I think it's kind of a lot of these, intellectual conservative types who are criticizing current media. Started off in Gamergate. It's pretty interesting. So,
no, that is. I think that's absolutely true. I think that history is. I'm familiar enough with it to say like it's not something that people have talked about enough.
Okay.
And it probably, like as you're describing it, it shows that it was something digital that tripped this as well, like in the big sense. That got these young men to say like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
So I don't discount that for a microsecond. I think though it's like you're right. It's like saying TV. I would say the same thing, by the way. I would say
Sure.
I'm generally like against TV, but that doesn't mean I don't like art and all kinds of things on it. You know what I mean? It's like in the environment that we're in, and I'm just more focused in my own life on like how do I just keep the time limited, right?
Yeah.
And then when they do have time to be on the screen or to be entertained or to, and games are interesting too because it's not TV. Like you are engaged.
Yeah,
and
it's a different engagement.
It's not TV, so there's something that's better about that. And of course, a lot of times you're doing that with other people. So it's like my son is screaming at his friends playing Fortnite, 12-year-old still. The other night,
well, I'm not putting Fortnite in the high class category, but I understand.
Good. I think I'm probably with you. And I've had times over the last couple of years where I've been like, I would love to find, and so I'll go and try to find something that I missed out on, and say, is there something out there that has like depth and artistry? I'd be interested in that.
Well, I'm going to recommend one of my games. There's a game called Halo 3 ODST. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
ODST, no.
No. Okay. So it was the fourth game in the Halo series that we made. It was after the big trilogy we made. Halo 1, 2, and 3 were like a trilogy. The Master Chief story ended in our version at the end of Halo 3. So we made this other game that sort of is a side game inside the Halo universe. But it was done with a very small team. It's one of my favorite scores for me that I got to work on. It's got film noir, jazz quality to the whole thing. And the entire game is based on Dante's Inferno. So you'll pick up on it right away if you ever
Oh, yeah.
play it. You'll see it immediately, and it's one of these games that people are still finding the symbolism and the depth to the story and the writing, and it's pretty interesting to me because kids, teenagers and 21-year-olds are coming back, playing a game like that, and then putting essays up online and talking about the stuff they discovered that has to do with Dante's Inferno, which is like, wow, that really worked. So
Yes. No, that's exactly, that's something I go back to the kids and go, we're going to play this. Classic. We're going to do this right now. And that's something I see, because what happened after 2001, I mean, I played Halo along the way, for sure.
Okay.
But I kind of like, I
Sure.
kind of went into PhD land, And
you had to.
and I mean, we were playing like Action Quake in the dorms, with
Okay.
wires connecting our computers.
Sure.
When I was
LAN parties. It's good.
But how? Because the thing that strikes me about it, and I've thought of this, and I know who you are, and you saw some of the things you were doing in the last few years, but I've thought of this separately, from you. Is the ultimate sign of what you're describing of like success is when you see those videos of those guys chanting. Have you seen these online?
Oh
Right?
yeah, of course. I mean, I love it.
It didn't look to me like an op. Like usually when I see that, it's like someone's paying for people to do that. Maybe some of that's behind, but I mean, it. How do you even describe that? Like this is
Right.
it's clear the kind of music that they're singing together.
Yes.
And you're coming together as the bros, like in the bathroom. And I've just seen that separate from this conversation. Just been like, the impact of that is remarkable because what's coming through is this actual art and story, like what everything it's connected to.
Yeah.
Right? And they're organically doing it, and that really is a great example of convincing my schizophrenic self, I guess.
Well, let me just say, my main point is like, if we discourage creative people from doing creative things in creative industries for some sort of religious or conservative ideology, then the only people who are in those industries are the heathens and the heretics and the crazies. So.
Right.
I was attracted to playing games from the very earliest moment I could. So I was always sort of a gamer, but the technology as a music producer and doing films and television and commercials and stuff, the technology wasn't attractive to me back in the 80s. It was too primitive. So I played the games, but I never thought, well, I could be involved in that because I didn't think it was artistically, it didn't have much fidelity, right? And some of the stories were kind of deep, depending on if you were playing interactive fiction kind of stories, and they could be really, really fun and deep and interesting, but they were not, we wouldn't consider those video games today. But I like the idea of interactive games. So when the technology got better and I got sort of sucked into it, my first game was Riven, the sequel to Myst, which was this, and the two brothers, Robin and Rand Miller, are they're sons, pastor's sons too. So, so anyway, I hit it off with them, and I got to work on Riven. My point is that I saw that I could actually take music, and because I have a master's in music composition from USC, and at some point I was in a early music ensemble, and I played recorders and Renaissance flutes, and I was in the choir there that we did Gregorian chants. So I read the Liber Usualis, I knew how to read the neumes, I did Gregorian chants. So it was just something that was part of my music education. And actually I had dipped into Gregorian chant on a couple of commercials during my commercials days, which is kind of weird. I think I did a Gregorian chant track for a Principal Financial Group commercial, if you can believe that. And of course I did Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean. So I did whatever I needed to do. But I'd worked on a few games, when I got to the Halo game, we wanted to create the feeling of ancient, epic, and mysterious. And we had a weekend to do it. It was going to be shown by Steve Jobs. And I needed to, when I was thinking, okay, ancient, I'm driving to the studio, and it just came into my head, I should do a Gregorian chant. Now, doing music for these video games, I was always sort of thinking, this would be so easy for me to just introduce these kids who are playing video games. I can introduce any kind of music that I know they haven't listened to, because I could hear the really kind of banal music that they were used to coming from video games. So I do a solo cello, and then they were like, wow, what is that? And so the idea of doing a Gregorian chant monk sound for the opening of Halo, that was just a quick decision. Did it, became the iconic thing. And, you know, as a commercial guy, I made sure we used it over and over. So years and years later, part of my conversion to Catholicism was a slight sort of guilty feeling, like, wow, I just, like, I've actually had people go, listen to real Gregorian chants and say, oh, they copied from Halo. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm like, God, forgive me. So I have been writing a mass now. I've written the Kyrie version.
Wow.
That's as far as I've gotten. It's horrible. I'm procrastinating. But part of that is I sort of feel like I need to do a legitimate rather than self-serving.
That's how. Please do that.
Okay.
That would be like that's amazing. Like, please do that. But I don't think there's any. I mean, you were doing the Lord's work. Man.
Well, you know what? I think to a certain extent, I've had people who are, you know, in their 30s come to me and say, you know, I heard your soundtracks and I decided to be a music major, and I became a cello major or a composer or a singer, and, you know, they're doing great stuff. And I've had people who say, yeah, I was attracted to the church because I'd never heard music like that before. And I thought, wow. As a creative person, though, it's hard to, like,
Right.
say, oh, that's God. I mean, because that sounds almost sacrilegious. But I think that when you hear creative people say, well, I don't know where that came from. And it's like, that's part of, we're made in the image of God. We're creative human beings. We're, you know, recreators. So we're not really doing anything totally new. Sometimes you just don't know where things come from. And then it gets used in ways that you're not expecting. And that's just a gift to even find out that, you know, somebody was affected by something. So.
Yeah. Well, this is something that, well, just let me start by this. There's the story that a friend of mine, he went to graduate school with me. He didn't do the PhD thing, and he went and taught high school. But he's an extremely thoughtful guy. He's taught high school now for many years. And, you know, philosophy, theology kind of guy. And he said, my wife asked him once, like, well, we could use you to help with the curriculum at the school we're associated with. And he said, you know, honestly, the first thing that I would do is, before you do any curriculum, is make sure you have a choir and make it mandatory that everyone participates in it.
Oh, I love that.
And this is a guy who's like an Aquinas guy, you know, like you would expect the kind of rational, and this is from years of experience and something that I've witnessed as well, where he said the first thing you need to do is they all should be part of a choir. And I say that to something that sort of bothers me about what's going on now is that we're losing complexity everywhere, right? And so complexity in music, obviously, you know, there always is a dumbing down, but it's not. I think things go up and down. I'm not. I like the digital world, but there is a lack of sort of complexity there and knowledge, and then even in the physicality. So I'm curious your thoughts about this of the sound. I mean, my grandfather was like an engineer at IBM who never moved up because he liked to solve the logical puzzles, and he'd build his own speakers. He was an audiophile.
Oh, cool.
And you know, some of that's in me, and I'm still looking at like crazy expensive speakers that I can't afford. They're fun. Like that's what I like. I like to see them, you know.
Yeah,
But you see now when you just I'm tempted to use this,
sure, right.
it's like and carry it around, and that I don't like that, Sam. I am, like I'm not. I don't like the fact that then we don't care about the quality of the sound either. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I get depressed when I do that. Sometimes it's like, oh, I just got to hear this, and it's like, oh, that's not so bad. And then I'm like, oh
Right.
man, I'm not getting the air is not moving. It's just, yeah,
Yeah, it's a weird thing, but and also I'm sure we've had some. I mean, you like your video games you're talking about, right? All of a
yep,
sudden you're able to do amazing things audio wise, so it goes both ways. But it's like there's something about the importance of music to the soul that
hmm,
like intellectuals have lost, but it's always been there. Like Plato talks about this. Educators who know something talk about it. And man, I mean, it is something we need to write about more at Blaze too, because I just feel like we have a lot of people who are like come to content for political reasons,
yeah,
and they're ensouled. They have souls, like
right, right. No,
they want more,
exactly,
and we know that this stuff is ugly, but it's like where's the beautiful stuff?
right.
And I'm sure like tons of beautiful stuff that's out there, and we need to show it to people.
Well, I mean, that's going back to my conversation with Buckley. Is like he didn't want to talk about anything he wanted to
Yeah.
know. He sort of wanted to know where my soul was and
Mhm.
how I felt about Bach, and it was a lesson for me to realize, yeah, I shouldn't get sidetracked or focus on those things, especially for somebody like Buckley who was so well read and erudite and but it's like Bach was his soul thing, right? I mean, it was like, yeah. So this is why I'm running for Congress, which is hilarious as the my coda in my life of whatever. And part of it is because I believe that culture is upstream from politics, but religion is upstream from culture. So like I really believe true religion is the foundation of everything, and then culture grows out of that, and politics is this like necessary sloppy evil. Sorry to you're a political science guy, so I don't mean to minimize it, but it's a necessary evil, right? And as a Federalist, I'm like, I wanted to go to Washington and like say, I even, I was talking about that Heritage Foundation thing. I said, if I were to sum up my philosophy in one statement, it would be, I'm going to take the ring of power and throw it into the fires of Mount Doom. And I got a little smattering of applause, and I'm like, no, seriously, like, I don't know any of the caucuses. I don't care. I'll start my own caucus called the Fellowship of the Ring. Like, and I know you're part of the Concord think tank. Concord? No, not
Claremont.
Concord. Yeah, Claremont.
Claremont Street,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Concord is games. People who know what I'm talking about are going to crack up at that. Yeah, the Claremont think tank thing. I'm just going to tell you that my visit to Washington a year ago, and I made the rounds of a whole bunch of the conservative folks, and they all liked what I was saying. But when I left there, I thought, everybody's too comfortable in Washington. Like, where are the revolutionaries? Like, they all were saying the right stuff, but I thought they've got their own buildings, they got their own lunches, they got their own people they hang out with. And I'm like, where's the fire? So I kind of am glad I lost the primary. I was only in for about 80 days and I lost in the primary. But I really didn't think I didn't think Trump could win. I just thought the country's too far gone. I would just be sort of a voice crying in the wilderness along with all these other conservatives. But the thing, I'm going to ask you about this now, because like Trump is not a conservative. He was a Democrat when Reagan was president, which is impossible, right? That makes no sense to me. But he is like the right person at the right time, at the right place. Like it's not like the conservative tent has expanded. It's like there's a Trump tent and the conservatives are invited in. That's the way I feel it. It's like, it's a huge tent that is so exciting because it's scary, it's violent, it's going to use a hatchet and a machete rather than a scalpel. It's not going to be conservative careful. Like I learned, as a conservative, that you want to do slow incremental progress carefully in the right direction with always sort of double checking to see about your unintended consequences. And it's like, that just hasn't worked because the Democrats have not been doing that. The liberals, the progressives have not been doing that on their side. And it's like a cancer has grown over the last 70 years. And I think the only way to excise it is through a person and a movement like MAGA. So that's my philosophy, or that's what I'm observing. What do you see? Am I right? Am I wrong? What do you think?
Well, the first thing is I want to talk more about your thoughts about your political future, because you're different than most people in Congress. The first difference is you've achieved excellence outside of politics.
Thank you.
But the second is I actually kind of like you. I think. So you seem like a decent person. Look, I'm torn between sort of like media and politics, and I kind of straddle those worlds. And my trajectory was I was pretty much done with the Republican Party and sort of American politics as is in like 2008, 2009.
Oh.
Just kind of looking back and thinking, I didn't change kind of my beliefs or whatever, but I thought this is all a bunch of crap. Like none of this is working.
It's not working.
These people aren't real, and you get to know behind the curtain some of these people too, and it's like this is just not interesting. They're not interesting people. Even their vices, a lot of the worst of them at the time aren't interesting. It's like they want like $5 to $10 million in assets. A house in the Chesapeake. Maybe they have an affair with the intern for titillation purposes, and you know what I mean. It's like you don't even like. There's no Caesar walking among you. Let's put it that. So it's very unimpressive. But so to me, Trump, when he first appeared, I thought he was hilarious. I've been following him my whole life.
Me too. I thought it was a joke. I didn't think he was serious. I thought it was like, this will be fun for a couple months and then it'll go away. So I didn't take him seriously until he was the only one left on stage. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on?
This is actually happening. And I had no...
I'm a convert, by the way. I'm a complete convert for all those reasons. Like, and even his vices are kind of interesting.
Yes, no, it's like at least like this guy, I can understand a little bit more, and he, so first I saw him as like he's Genghis Khan, he's Attila the Hun, he's the scourge of God in the Republican Party, and they deserve every second of it. So I don't feel sorry for any of them.
Exactly.
Let them have it. But then, you saw something more, and then you saw what they did to him, and he kind of revealed how corrupt the system was. Even I, who is that already very cynical, I didn't do work for corruption. I worked for private interests who wanted to know about the structure of money flowing out of the cities in Southern California.
Yes.
And so I was kind of black-pilled, as they say, on this a long time ago. But no one thought that the DOJ was that far gone, that the agencies would work together to thwart a presidency in that manner. And just to see that made me sick. I was leaving D.C. when I was little, and even up until like 2015, 2016, I would go there and I'd do the walk around the monuments by myself. I'm a true believer, and I know a lot about the history, or at least compared to most people, I guess. But
sure.
It just really was was proud of America and of DC and seeing it. And I was on the plane once realizing in 2016 how bad it actually was there because of what they were doing to Trump. And I felt physically sick. And I couldn't look at DC again. It just felt like an evil place.
Wow. I called it Mordor when I first got there. I saw the Capitol dome lit up at night, and I took a picture and I said, I'm entering Mordor.
Yes.
And all the people who follow me laughed and thought it was funny. But I was like, no, I'm serious. That's what it feels like.
It felt like an evil place. And then there's the extreme is like vices, too small. You could almost, those people are like, bureaucratic souls, right? And so I hate that. But But what I hate even more is, DC with his big appetites for vice like you have now. So now, I think, could you just want to have like a normal affair? Does it have to be a threesome with another congressman? That's how crazy it is. I'm not joking. Like right now, right?
All right.
And so Trump is really the unlooked for hope that came out of nowhere. And once I saw that what he was doing, that's when I went back and I ended up at Claremont, and we created American Mind, a publication there, and I ran the fellowship programs for a number of. It was like cohorts of the real people getting stuff done, like the younger, especially younger, who cared about what's going on. So there are lawyers, sheriffs, mid-career people, like Charlie Kirk was one of our Lincoln Fellows.
Oh, cool.
Jack Posobiec, I got in a lot of trouble from him, from National Review. And now his audience is a lot larger than 2 or 3 cable.
Yeah, I got to talk to Jack a couple of weeks ago too, and that was really interesting. So, yeah.
So these guys were all part of that. And so what I've been a part of in the last 8 years is really putting together that new right movement to say, look, we have to, just like you were saying, we have to actually do things. We have to actually change the structure of what's there. Or otherwise, we've just been yakking for 70 years for no reason since God and Man at Yale. And God and Man at Yale, by the way, Buckley comes out and says, rightly, that Yale's full of a bunch of godless commies.
Yeah, I mean, everything he said in that book was 100% true and is applicable today. We see the result of everything he exposed, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm all about that and that movement. I think that Congress does need. Congress is the Aegean stables. One of the things.
I don't want to do that.
And it had centuries of horse dung, and he had to divert a river to flow through it, and that is sort of what needs to happen in Congress. But I think that we're in an incredible time because, just for instance, like all those fellows we put together in those fellowships, there's like over 55 people who are from the fellowships alone, like who actually went through the Claremont fellowships, who are all in that White House now, and going there after the inauguration was really gratifying because it just. They're all younger. They all don't care, just like you, about the city. Like they all would totally agree with everything you're saying. Like yes, because they really don't care about being comfortable in D.C. They know what they're there to do, and they're smart and they're driven. And those are the people like just coming up behind the scenes. So I have a lot of hope, because of Trump, and never mind the assassination attempt that was thwarted on live TV by turning of the head and everything he's done since. And now you see what he's doing. I mean, the guy works 17 hours a day. Like
it's
this
incredible.
is what he is going to do unto death. Like he sees that. And so we have this movement that's going now, but we are going to need more good people in Congress.
Yeah, well, this is actually when I lost in the primary, and it was one of those stupid bloodbaths, Republicans killing each other, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. So it was like, well, good. I'll never have to do that again. I really felt because I taught my daughters that what should happen in the United States, especially with House of Representatives or any political position, is it shouldn't be a career. It should be a civic duty. You go in, you serve your time, just like jury duty. So I said we should have what's called Congress duty. Everybody should get a letter at some point like, oh, nuts, I got to spend the next 2 years in Congress. All right, well, then I'll be back. And so I used to say it should be Congress duty, and my daughters laughed. And then when somebody sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said, we'd like you to think about running for Congress, I'm like, oh, God, is that you talking to me, like calling my bluff? So essentially that's why I was in. And then I thought, well, I did it. I tried, I lost. I don't have to do this again. It's like I'm disqualified now because I did it. But then Trump won. You saw the debate, you saw the assassination attempt, you saw J.D. Vance, you just saw this horrible stuff happening. And when Trump won and he came in, and he actually I was at the inauguration, so that's how excited I was. But when I saw what he was doing, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's only got 2 years because there's not enough margin. And the midterms are definitely a dangerous thing. And if we lose in the midterms, there's going to be a horrible backlash. And he needs reinforcements in Congress now in the midterms. And we need people who are looking forward, 8, 12, 16 years down the road. We have to keep this thing going because of the 70 years of cancer, in my opinion, that's grown. So I felt like, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to try again. I'm just going to start early and really make sure I have some support, especially from at the national level. I don't want to see a Republican primary bloodbath in my district. I'm sort of like, if I'm not supposed to be the one, I'll get out of the way and back somebody else. But if I'm going to be the guy, I want everybody to say, you're the guy. That's my philosophy. It's like, I don't think we're going to unseat the Democrat Susie Lee in this district unless I'm working the ground in the district and the national folks are saying, yeah, you're the dude. And it's not the way Republicans tend to do. It's like, oh, we're going to do this primary and we're going to, it's a cauldron to get the best person out. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work in this case. That's my philosophy. And maybe it's too blunt, but, I want to see people, I want to see the Heritage Foundation and Claremont folks say, yeah, we like this guy. We think everybody should get behind him. Or if you find somebody else in my district, then I'll get behind them. That's what I think. Like, we can't.
Yeah.
The primary in my district goes into June, which means there's not enough runway to beat the Democrat after that. I want to start going after Susie Lee now, this summer. And so by next summer,
right,
we're going to be, I want a steamroller, frankly. So that's the political side of me. That's the tactical side.
No, I think that's exactly right. You don't want you don't want some bloody primary at all. You want everyone to say, no, this is a guy. Find out if that can happen, make it happen, and then go for it.
That's what I'm trying to do.
And I think that makes a ton of sense. I'd like to airdrop you into a couple other places throughout the country. I think
I'm ready.
There's a real need for this, and I think you're an example of what's kind of just being called forth from the electorate at this point, because people do see how bad it is. That's been exposed. I mean, it's interesting. Like, we're talking on the heels of Elon Musk being upset and thinking the big beautiful bill isn't so beautiful. Even ugly, right? And in a principled, abstract way, he's not wrong, but they had to get the agenda passed. So, but what it's doing is it's exposing to Republican voters who are still paying attention, by the way. So
yes.
Like Blaze numbers for our news site, which is pretty well traveled. It's always top 5 right-leaning company, no matter how you cut it. And you think that the quarter for November 2024, right, is the big leap. Like, that's constitutionally mandated increase in clicks, as a friend of mine calls it. So that's good for business, right? So it goes up. But we kept our numbers in the spring as well.
Really? Oh, excellent.
People, confirmation hearings are like full of celebrities or celebrity-like figures now. People are interested because they want to see that mandate actually be implemented, and so they're much more serious than they have been in the past. And I think they want to vote for people like yourself, Republicans too. They do not want the same old. And you can, but doing that is hard, as from a primary, when you really get the brass tacks of how you zoom into the local. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it's two different. There's the national level, or and people that might be attracted to, like, oh, Marty, the music guy, is doing this thing. That's cool. That doesn't get me anywhere in my district. These are I have to get to know all the people in my district up and down in Nevada. That's good. That's a whole different track. So I'm going to play both at the same time because I have to.
Yeah. So what would you say when you think about Congress? What would you say a metric for success is, given the kind of crap show that's going on there?
Well, first of all, personally, for me, my slogan is I plan on being the best composer in Congress. Which is sort of a low bar, but I think I can hit that.
It's probably a low bar, unless probably. Can you play chopsticks?
I've actually talked to some people. I was back there a couple of weeks ago, and I talked to a few congressmen, and I walked through the halls of Capitol the Capitol, and every one of the people I talked to would say something about like, oh yeah, I play guitar, or I do this thing, or I'm in a choir. So it's like there's a lot of people, music and other. You can bring that out when you're talking to people about stuff. But yeah, composers were kind of rare in society anyway, so I think I'll be safe on that one. And frankly, one of my other slogans was less lawyers, more composers. So, and I'm sort of serious about that because I've worked with a lot of lawyers. I've sued Microsoft, I've sued Bungie and Activision. I've had a lot of lawsuits in my day, which is why I can live in Las Vegas and take a little vacation here in our place in Santa Barbara, and I don't need the job. See, that's the thing. This is not on my bucket list for a career, right?
Yeah.
Which is when I tell people I'm not a politician and I don't need the job, everybody looks askance because they've heard that before, and I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like I'm not a politician, and I'm telling you the truth, which is almost oxymoronic, I think.
But that's more than half the battle, like right there.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
That's
But I feel like cognitive diversity in Congress is what's needed. You need people who think differently than each other, and if you have nothing but a bunch of self-serving, legal, politic-based people, it's one of the first things a guy who was talking to me a year ago said, Marty, you have to understand how hard it is to find good people to run for office. And I was like, well, yeah, who would want to run for office? And then, of course, it hit me. That's the problem. If the good people don't want to run for office, then all we get are bad people in office. So I'm like, oh, that was another sort of conviction that I felt. We only have ourselves to blame if we're not willing to give it a shot. So I don't know. I have no idea what it would be like to try to be inside the 235 crazies in the House and Senate. Is it 235? What is it? No.
4.
What is that number? 435? It's something horrible. I mean, I know that any good team I've ever been on that is unified to create something has been, at the biggest, I think it was 120. My favorite team was the ODST team, which I think we were just around 35 people. The Halo 1 team was about 35 people. I just don't know how Congress can do anything. There's too many people. I don't know how I would function in a place like that, but I'll try. I mean, at a minimum, the Trump team needs the votes so they can continue the fight that they're on. And
oh yeah, and look, I mean, I think that everyone in DC thinks it's going to stay the same, but look what happened in the House already, right? I mean, I heard it was impossible to get rid of the speaker, and they got rid of him. And I warned, I have lots of friends who work in DC in different capacities, and I would say these crazy things to them, like, this guy, you think he's going to be around forever? The people do not care. And
right.
Lo and behold, Gates and other bomb throwers, that happens. That was supposed to be impossible. So you could see new caucuses forming. You could see all kinds of interesting things. The one thing I will say, though, that sort of gets lost in the shuffle a lot is that everything's become dumber, right? And one of the things that's actually troubling is, for conservatives who are concerned about the size of government, I said this leads to more government. We need bigger staffs that are better paid in the Senate. So since 1978, the size of the staff has gone down, and that's a problem, because if you really want to get things done, your crack team can be those staffers where you can think outside the box. And too many conservative types are like, oh well, no, it's great, everyone will get paid nothing, and we'll have 5 people do it. And it's like, no. So there's where you find your really smart lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying lawyers shouldn't be involved at some level. I'm just saying. I don't want lawyers actually talking about writing law, because I've spoken to many lawyers, and I don't think they actually know how to speak English, frankly.
But this is really key, and people need to realize this, like, as a whole, you have to have, and then committee staffers who really know what they're talking about, are
Yep.
really, driven and are there for like 40 years. Like that's invaluable. Like a good committee staffer is important too. So, and then on those committees, I think there's interesting things that could be done. But all that's just only because you know how bad it is going in, and your expectations are low, and you actually want to do the job. I just go back to really simple things every year that goes by. I feel like I'm just saying simpler and simpler things, or seeing simpler and simpler things to be
Yep.
true.
Yep.
But the political will, like what does the Trump administration have? There's a bunch of people who are on staff or in high level positions who actually want to do the job and accomplish the thing. And if
Yes.
you don't have that, right, it's like you have nothing, and why would anyone competent want to work with them? But when you actually have that going for you, then all of a sudden, like you find out, miracles could happen, and you get things done, and the border is all of a sudden not a problem, or whatever. So that the political will is so important, and I think that the more good people come together and try to do this in whatever capacity, whatever it leads to, the better, because now is the time, and kudos for you for that too. So, I mean, what no one can take away from you, right? Which is what I like about what you're saying, is that you don't have to do this,
Right.
and that is really, really important, because it's like that's the like the halo that surrounds you, and the credibility that gives you credibility for whatever else you say. But
what I know as I'm learning more about how things work, I know that I'm going to need, if I make it all the way in, then the choosing of staff is going to be hugely, like, it's going to be everything.
Yeah.
And I'm going to need to rely on people like you to say, yeah, here's some people that you should consider interviewing and talking to, and I don't want to not get the best people because the budgets aren't enough. I don't know. It just, that makes no sense. I talked to a guy who founded Bungie Software when he was still going to University of Chicago a few weeks ago on my show, and we were talking about the old days and making stuff. And he said something I thought was really interesting. He says, the project is the staff. The project is the crew. Whatever project it is, it's there's nothing more important than the people who are making it. And that's what I learned when I was making things. So the way that the team chemistry, the leadership, the camaraderie, all of that stuff. And if you have the wrong people in the wrong place, it's horrible. It's just, you will make a bad thing. And I got to believe that's what must be happening in Washington, because just look at the results. So I am assuming that the staff is everything. So right now I'm trying to surround myself with the best people for this race. And, whatever I'm going to raise as much as I can. I know that the money is a big thing, and you have to show the folks in Washington that you can raise money. I've also told them that I'm kicking in. So I'm not going to. Susie Lee spends $6 million every time she runs in Congress in this district. And I'm not going to say, wow, if only we would have spent that much, we could have beat her. It's that's just not going to happen. I won't let that happen. I'll get beat because of some other reason, but not because we were outspent, which means I got to figure out how to raise money and get support in the district, and then support nationally. But then I've sort of if I win, then I'm there. And then it's okay, now what do I do?
Yeah, well, that's where things get interesting.
It's like a dog chasing the car and catches it. I'm wait, what? I didn't mean that.
well, let me tell you, I say right now, if you get in, things are going to be a lot more interesting. I'm going to be going at least once a month, if not more. But as opposed to what we were saying earlier, it's now a magical place again. And it sounds cliche, but I just, the same pit in my stomach when I flew out, I go back now, and it's like all the doors open, we have our own restaurants now. It's I'll be sitting at Butterworth's next week. Raheem Kassam and friends, Bart, who owns that place, they just got a great review in the Washington Post, because
cool.
we went to the MAGA place to rip on it, but the food is really good, So and you see someone like, you go to the White House, you see people it's just, it's just a different world. And to me, it's not, what I'm saying is not about like the faces you see on Fox News or Blaze or whatever.
Yeah.
I try to bring in the people I'm talking about, but it's the people who are really executing behind the scenes in many pockets, not everywhere, but
Yes.
big pockets of this. This is totally different than last time.
Yeah.
Everyone realizes this is the chance.
Well,
So
see, that 4-year hiatus, it might have been the gift that
Oh, yeah.
God wanted us to. I hate to bring God into this, but there's something biblically
Yeah.
prophetic about this 4-year down, because all of a sudden the Trump team hit the ground running this time like they never would have in 2020. That's what I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I had a friend, 2020 election, called me up. He's in tech and finance kind of guy, but younger, like making his way.
Yeah.
Involved in some interesting things. But he called me up and he said, this is right after Trump lost. So,
Okay.
was not given the win. But right after that, am I supposed to say this? I forget.
Yeah, it's okay. I agree with you.
But he calls me and he said, I see this right away. This is the redemption arc. He's like, I don't mean to be sacrilegious, but that's the biggest story. They paraded in front of Trump. They ushered him into D.C. They just destroyed him. He's like, I see the story now. He'll come back with almost religious significance or providence attached to it. And
Well, turning and getting shot in the ear, if that isn't providence, I don't know what is.
I mean, it's like, I'm not the guy who's like says that stuff, but that happened. I still can't believe that happened. No one can. They hardly show it on TV.
course
Everyone
not.
saw it. Elon Musk, within an hour, right? Right after that, he's like, I support Donald Trump for president. Heaven has spoken, I mean, this was, we all witnessed it. And then when you see his change, you see someone who knows that this is what he's going to do, and he doesn't care about anything else. And that's significant. And so, I think that though, when you go to DC, I guess my point is, if you end up there, there's a lot of people who to collaborate with, who are the real deal, who are really doing things.
Yeah, I need to know who those are.
Because I hate all these people generally, but there are now good people there and doing good things. And also, these 2 years are important, but look, there's a potential here, right? We got 10, 12 years, whatever. We gotta really do it, and we need people, banding together. And I see it more and more. Like, I mean, you're an example of this, but I see it happening. And I hate to say this, but I really do feel somewhat positive about the future. Like, I mean, I agree with you too. Like before, I was like, how is it even possible?
It's not even possible.
Because the system is so jacked. But a couple things happened that made it possible, and here we are.
Yeah.
So you're in Santa Barbara right now?
Yeah.
Nice.
Probably shouldn't say that, but I am.
Yeah, it's all right. Why not? It's a beautiful
I don't know.
place.
It
we
is.
used to joke,
It's my favorite
we'd
place.
drive up from Ventura County, and my joke was always, oh, look, the clouds just lifted. The city council here doesn't allow those. To go up the
Well,
clouds.
when I went to USC, and this is way back in 1980, 81, I was going to USC grad school, and we had no money. My wife had been married 47 years, so I'm one of those who I have no interesting vices, which I don't even, my vices are pretty much non-existent, so I'm really not interesting. But when we used
the productive stuff.
yes, exactly, I channeled it all over there.
Actually create cool stuff. So
But when we would look for like, what can we do to get out of LA, go, USC, and she was working and I was working at the grad school, as a TA. We would save up enough money to drive to Santa Barbara, stay at the Hotel 6, which you couldn't make reservations for, but if you sat in the parking lot and waited for somebody to check out, I could run in and grab that room. So we'd have one room on Saturday night, so we'd stay Saturday and Sunday and go out to dinner one time and be at the beach. So in my mind, Santa Barbara has always been this sort of heavenly paradise.
Yeah.
And so now that I can afford to do it, I'm like, that's where we're going to have a vacation home, because like it's the way my mind works. But I had forgotten that there's some sort of amazing Mediterranean belt here that like in November it's 72 and sunny, and in October it's 72 and sunny, and in February it's 72 and sunny. I'm like, this is amazing. So it's great.
No, that's exactly what people don't realize about Southern California is that you usually go that far south and you get Florida. And I grew up with the Northeastern relatives who thought Florida was like heaven on earth.
Yeah.
Then, when I moved to California for college, and mostly we moved from Pasadena to Texas, Pasadena to Dallas 4 years ago. You can, just randomly 4 years ago happened to be the date we moved. You can figure that out.
Yeah. Okay.
A few things were going on, but
Yes.
when I got there, it was like, what? Wait a minute. And first I ripped on California because, the hatred is so deep. Like there's so many things not to like, not to dislike.
Oh, I was positive we would never move back to California. I was absolutely positive, but this came up and I'm like, oh, well, that's this one little strip of heaven.
Oh yeah. What people don't understand is like this is rare. There's few places in the world for real.
Exactly
and
right.
also the geography is incredible. And I don't lie to my friends in Texas. Now that I am a Texan, I say, look, I mean, the geography and weather here suck where we live right now in the northern Dallas area. Everything else is way better and more convenient, in many ways. But let's not lie about the benefit. But that all brings me to say what you need to do.
Yeah.
One of these weekends is you drive down. It's between Ojai and Santa Paula. You drive down and you got to go to that campus, Thomas Aquinas College, if you haven't been. Cause
Oh, is that where that is?
it's a beautiful campus.
Oh, I've driven from Ojai to Santa Paula a couple of times.
So one time
I didn't know that's where. Well, no wonder you love it there.
One time, Sir Anthony Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony, was driving to Ojai and he saw the new church there, which I encourage him in listening. Like, you look at this campus; it is absolutely beautiful.
Okay, we'll go.
One of those beautiful churches built in like the last 10, 20 years. And Hopkins saw it and he like just pulled over. He's like, what the hell is this? So he was wandering around campus. Probably some homeschool kid saw him and didn't know who he was, but someone saw him and said, hey, let's give you a tour. So he came back the next day, and you can find it on YouTube. He gave a wonderful impromptu lecture about acting.
Really? Oh, how fascinating!
Yeah. But it's a beautiful place.
Well, I mean, we love the area. My California story is, of course, I've had to work in LA all these years, and I've worked with some really great actors like Robert Davi. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a super conservative guy, and he sings great, and he's been in a ton of movies, but he's a conservative. And so every time I will work with an actor and find out they're conservative, it's so like, okay, I remember that. So I've a lot of conventions will be in San Francisco, and then I have to go to LA and Hollywood to work with actors and stuff. So I worked with Paul McCartney for 2 years and worked with him a couple of times in LA at Capitol Records and up in the Valley at some point. Anyway, I know California, but I was like, I'll never want to live here because in 2000, I think it was 2005, there was a ceremony that enshrined Halo into the Game Hall of Fame thing that they were doing. And I was sort of representing the Halo team, so I was there at this thing and this party and got my picture and signed the thing, whatever. And of course, they had the political muckety-mucks of the day there, and that's when I met Gavin Newsom, who was mayor of San Francisco. And, there was the dinner and party at night, and I got to talk to him a few times. I've told this story before, but I got to tell you. So I came home from that, and I said to my wife, I said, Marcy, you will not believe, I just met the slimiest, greasiest politician in the history of man. It's like he's straight out of Central Casting. It could only happen in San Francisco. Thank God he'll never make it out of San Francisco. So my political instincts are not always that accurate, but I can hardly believe that this guy is governor. I mean, Jerry Brown was bad enough, but I mean, goodness sakes.
Yeah, you pray to have Jerry Brown back. I mean, and the problem with Newsom that I always have is I kind of want to know like what your struggles are, you know, in life, to get a sense of a person. I mean, honest to God, I think the biggest struggle he ever had was having to wait for Jerry Brown to do his whatever third term, you know,
Yeah.
and he had to hold his horses before he ran, and that was very difficult for the guy. Maybe that and having to do the press conferences about cheating with his chief of staff's wife, but these people are. I mean, there's no. We were just talking about on the show today here about why he said something about how the trans thing is unfair to women.
Yeah. Right. But he
now
won't do anything.
They're saying you guys aren't doing anything about it, so we're going to
Yeah.
take away the money. And he doesn't care. I've never. These are not people who take stands. They're not people who really have accomplished the normal way you think of accomplishment.
Yeah.
And that state is, you know, we talk about our sacred democracy. Like, why in our sacred democracies, in the biggest ones like New York and California, do the sons of governors become governor? Or why does one guy, Willie Brown, be the guy who names, you know, Newsom mayor? Willie's like one of the best politicians in all of America.
Oh yeah. No, he's incredibly successful, but so crooked.
Yeah. Now his corruption I actually like more because it actually is not woke at all. I think
Yeah, exactly. Super self-serving.
he wants $20,000 suits and just to
Cigars.
I don't know. I mean, at least I can understand that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Huey Long or something. Yeah, I was just going to tell you the only other thing. The other toe I dipped into politics was I have a friend who used to be big on radio talk shows. His name was Dick Staub. Have you ever heard of Dick Staub by any chance?
I don't know if I know that.
It's a Christian talk show. Did Salem nationally back in the 80s and 90s. Anyway, he was a good friend of mine out of Chicago when we lived there, and he asked me if I wanted to go to the National Review Convention in 1996. So I'm like, yes. So
Yeah.
I went to the National Review Convention. I got to ask a question of, well, I'll tell you this very fast. I asked a question of Bob Dole, Senator Dole, after he gave this little speech. And I said, Senator Dole, power runs into Washington like water runs downhill. If you're president, what are you going to do to reverse the flow of power? And, he held his pen in one hand. He's like, I don't think I understand the question. I've worked my whole life to get this power. Why would I give any of it up? And I just sort of like, okay, that makes sense. I get it. That's in a nutshell. It doesn't matter which side you're on. That's the problem.
Right.
So I remember it just a little clicked in my head, like, man, that power is the problem with Washington, and nobody is thinking about how to disperse the power out. And I'm not even saying that needs to be the first thing that happens now, because the Trump administration has to wield the sword of power to some extent and cut the cancer out. And then I'm hoping that there are some people that can truly look at what it means to be federalist and to distribute power back to the states. I don't know if that can happen or not, but that would be my vision.
Yeah, well, I think there's only one way to find out.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call you up, and we're going to talk again, because I didn't even get to half of what I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to talk about the woke right and this whole. I feel like that whole term is stupid, and it's sort of like saying, well, there is anti-Semitism on the left and anti-Semitism on the right, and I'm like, no, there's just anti-Semitism. It's an evil thing. I don't care who's using it for what reasons. It's an evil thing. I actually think anti-Semitism is not a political problem. I think it's a spiritual warfare problem, and I will always believe that. I think that, because it says so in the Bible, so that's why I believe it. But anyway, I can't just spring that on you at an hour and a half in. So we'll have, if you'd be willing to do this again, or maybe we'll just have coffee sometime where you can talk to me about what you think. But I'll start watching your shows and see what you guys are talking about. I know you're talking a little bit about the woke right thing.
Oh yeah. Well,
I don't want to get into it, but I know it's a thing, and I hate the term, and I feel like it's a way of weakening this movement that we have, and I don't want to see that happen.
Absolutely, and yeah, my James Lindsay online is this influencer who's been trying to propagate it, and
Yep.
always nice to the guy. I never had
Yeah,
a problem
I
with
actually thought he was kind of cool, a couple of years ago, but I
it.
don't get what he's doing.
He just, I mean, just out of the blue, he just started. I mean, no precipitating anything. I mean, it's thought we had a great relationship. Just started attacking me as if I was a Nazi, and
Oh,
very bizarre ways. He talks about. We won't get into it, but
sure.
there's a guy, Carl Schmidt,
I
who
did bring
writes
it up at the very end. Sorry about that.
who writes really interesting stuff about executive power.
Yeah,
He did become a Nazi. I think they rejected him at some point, but he did. He's in Germany, but if you're if you're reading about executive power, his writings and politics, his writings are stuff you could read in grad school,
sure.
profitably. And I was taught by students of Leo Strauss, who was a Jew who left Nazi Germany. He was also a political thinker. They actually have interesting letters back and forth. Ms. Schmidt corrected his book based on it. In other words, this isn't a thoughtful guy, right?
Sure.
But he just said everyone's Schmittian, like they all, the Ians, Istics, and Isms. Like you follow Carl Schmitt, which is crazy. And I even on text, I like last time I talked to the guy, I was like, here's what I think about Schmitt. He says really interesting things like this, but ultimately politics isn't might makes right. I believe in justice, just like Plato did. But this is a really important debate. He's right about friends and enemies being the beginning of politics. Kind of a nuanced answer.
Yeah, of course.
And then the last time on Twitter, I interacted with him. I was just asking him like, who are you talking about? Who are these woke right people at Blaze?
Yeah.
And he just says, denounce Schmidt, which is
some sort of like litmus test. That's what I just hate that stuff. I really do. It's like,
stupid stuff.
well, I sort of, yeah, we're over an hour and a half. I'm really sorry about that. I try not to do that long of a show at this point. I mean, but if you'd be willing to come back or talk to me another time, I'd love to stay in touch. This was great.
Oh yeah, let's do both. Let's follow up offline. Let's also do another show sometime, whenever you want.
Okay.
It's really really great to be here with you.
Well, I appreciate it, and I will certainly be talking to you, especially if I go all the way and I need a staff. I'm like, okay, now what do I do? So,
We have
thanks.
good lists. We have good lists.
You have some good lists. All right, excellent. Thanks. All right, everybody, this is the end. Thank you very much, Matthew, for being here, and we'll see you guys next week.